right, we will go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's SheLeadsGov ICMA kind of conversation. It's not quite a webinar. This is a comfortable conversation on women in local government, where we have a wonderful panel of local government leaders who will discuss the challenges and opportunities that they've experienced in their career. My name is Laura Savage. I'm a Senior Program Manager of Equity and Inclusion at ICMA, and a main portion of my portfolio is uplifting and engaging members through the SheLeadsGov initiative. SheLeadsGov is a global initiative where we promote gender balance and empower and engage women in professional local government management. Just a kind of a high level view of what ICMA does with SheLeadsGov is things like this: hosting digital space or physical space where we can build and maintain relationships. We work with our committees, for example, submissions for the annual conference for sessions, maintaining gender balance. We do SheLeadsGov roundtables and events at annual conferences and like the local government Reimagine conferences, as well as our affiliate partners at their events. If you haven't noticed yet, I hope you start reading the PM magazine. We've got a monthly Women in Leadership column that is written by women from all parts of the globe. We provide content, resources, and support for those who are entering the profession or are becoming senior advisors. We have scholarships, and then some of our most well-known events are the SheLeadsGov Luncheon at the annual conference and the International Women's Day Virtual Forum that we host with Cigna. And the next one coming up is March 6th, Wednesday, March 6th. So be on the lookout for that and register for that free event. So why do we talk about gender balance? Well, in 1974, so right at 50 years ago, the first task force on women in the profession began confronting the status quo of gender diversity in the association as well as in the profession. And what we found was only 1% of our chief administrative officers were women. So that means 99% of our members at that time were men. That task force then dove deeper and determined some pre-entry and post-entry barriers that influenced a woman's ability to serve at that level. So again, you can see the numbers here, 1974, and we've made some progress since then, right? We needed to know why there were these challenges. And some of the things that ICMA did at that time was remove sexist language and imagery from all ICMA materials. So for example, instead of referring to your city manager as he, we used more inclusive pronouns. And why it seems kind of obvious today. I mean, that was something that was a big deal 50 years ago. And then in 2003, ICMA's Next Generation initiatives began to track and improve equity in access to and the utilization of ICMA membership and programs. Excuse me about that. So this chart here just goes to show that throughout the years, ICMA continues to challenge the status quo. And we've done other items such as additional task forces, and equity and inclusion committees, and working with our elected board of directors. So you can see here, 2013 was the second task force on women in the profession. And then in 2014, we had the task force on strengthening inclusiveness in the profession. And so these were both, the task forces were chartered by ICMA past presidents. And even though we've improved the equity and inclusion metrics, you can see that much work remains. Where we are today, the most recent member survey was in 2019, and it revealed that there was a 77% increase in women's participation in ICMA. and a 38% increase in female chief administrative officers. So that's fantastic. I can't wait to see what happens within the next decade. And now I would like to introduce Erika Cooper. She is the Senior Program Manager of Career Development at ICMA, and she's going to lead the panel discussion.
No matter what we.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. As Laura mentioned, I am Senior Program Manager for our Career Advancement team at ICMA. I'm really excited for all of y'all to be here today. Just want to remind everybody to please mute yourself if you can. That way we don't have any interruptions during the panel. We have 3 amazing panelists today. I'm going to introduce them and then we'll get started into a few questions that we have. Again, Laura mentioned this is a conversation, so we want to spend some time at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat or raise your hand and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So I first want to introduce Valmarie Turner. She is Assistant City Manager for Fairfax, Virginia. And then we got Shanna Sims-Bradish. She is Assistant City Manager for University Park, Texas. And then we got Peggy Flynn, and she is City Manager of Petaluma, California. So welcome our panelists. Thank you for being here today. I'll go ahead and jump into our first question. What is something that has surprised you most during your career in local government?
So I got the short straw, so I'll start. First, good afternoon to everyone that's in attendance. Really appreciate you being here. So, well, I'll say this. So I believe that the local government profession is one of the most rewarding career paths you can take. Has been extremely fulfilling for me, both personally and professionally. I think what surprised me the most was that you can literally have 5 different careers with local government. I mean, think about it. We have so many different business lines from finance, budgeting, procurement, urban planning, zoning, health and human services, housing, economic development, public works, you name it. The opportunities are absolutely endless. So I started my local government career in affordable housing and health and human services, and I managed a boatload of grant funds from community development, block grant funds, home investment partnership program, the emergency solutions grant. These grant funds actually afforded me the opportunity to work on projects and programs and services and other areas of government that I would not have had the opportunity. That experience opened many doors for me, from being able to build subdivisions, buying apartment complexes, building parks, developing streets, sidewalk programs, strategic plans, leading some amazing teams and departments, and also serving with state associations, and now, to be on the ICMA executive board, where I'm actually get to impact the profession as a whole. And all of that, I started 30 years ago.
A lot of amazing work. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Shanna.
You're muted.
You're muted.
I'll tell you, I've had a really enjoyable career and experience. One of the most meaningful parts of my career has been the relationships. It's really been enjoyable, not only to have colleagues in many cities that I've learned so much from, but the communities that I've worked with have been really enjoyable, and I've learned a lot from them. In terms of kind of what surprised me, I think what surprised me is that my career progression hasn't always been linear. Sometimes you make maybe a little sideways move, but I think as long as you're making progression and you're learning from your experience, that really has been helpful for me throughout my career. I will say I had to learn that opportunities come when you least expect it. You can have a plan, and then something pops up, and you really have to be in a position to be flexible to say, you know what, this is a great opportunity, and I need to take that way to say yes on that. I will say throughout my career, one of the things I've learned is how much I don't know. It feels like every day is a learning journey, but I also have figured out that I can figure things out. So I'm not as nervous now when you don't know something necessarily. It's ways of figuring it out. And finally, I would just say I've learned throughout my career that taking a leap of faith has been beneficial. That's both in relationships with people, taking on projects that maybe you were a little scared of. All of it really led to really enjoyment throughout my career.
Awesome. Good advice. Peggy.
Well, I'm gonna take a little bit of creative license and just take both from what Valmarie and Shanna said. And you know, for almost being in local government for 3 decades, I've seen the evolution of what the scope of local government work is, right? And there was a day when it was just like, we do roads, we do public safety, here's the things we do. And now so much more. Local government takes on, definitely cities have taken on county work, county has taken on state work, and it does provide those opportunities for professional growth and evolution in your career. So, you know, my background was communications and not the typical trajectory for a city manager. And yet, because our scope of work is so vast, it afforded me the ability to be involved on some pretty significant initiatives. And because it's because our work is so vast, it's created these opportunities. It's essential that we are meaningfully engaging our communities and getting them involved in local decision making. And I got to tell you, that's where the rubber hits the road. And so like I said, it's just, I've seen this trajectory and just really embracing it. And to Shanna's point, you know, always tell the staff to take risks, you know, fail fast, learn from them, but we have to be the creative doers on the ground. So it's been really exciting, and this is where the work gets done. So.
Awesome. Thank y'all for your answers. So we'll go to the next question. I know I struggle with this, and I know maybe a lot of people do too, but how do you balance your personal and professional life, especially as a woman in local government? And Valmarie, you're first.
Well, you know, again, a local government is something that is extremely rewarding for me, both professionally and personally. So I have to be extremely intentional about balance. Or I heard someone say work-life integration, and making them work together to ensure that they are effective. So in this profession, as anyone will tell you, if you're not careful, you can work 7 days a week, which is not healthy. I'm extremely dedicated to serving. However, I have learned to make time for self-care, to take care of my household, which admittedly is a little easy for me right now because I don't have small kids anymore. And to make sure that I have time for family and friends. As an example, for me, Saturday is my day. That is my day. I try to reserve that day for me, my family, my friends. Now, Sunday morning, I'm usually in church. But after that, usually Sunday afternoon and Sunday night, I'm working or I'm preparing for the week. So I'm real big on taking vacations and visiting family. I live in Virginia and most of my family is in Florida. And I try to typically do it around our council schedule. So I'm fortunate our council is out every August. So I can assure you this August, I will be somewhere at some point in that month taking vacation. So again, balancing personal and professional life is really more about work-life integration, because it's not an 8 to 5 job. And when you love what you do and you serve and live in the same community that you work in, it really is 24/7. So you have to be very intentional about it.
I really like that, and using that word of integration instead. I think that's really realistic and a really great point. All right, Shanna.
I like the word integration too, because I think it all has to work together. I will say for personally, this is almost like a day-to-day activity. Some days I do well on it, some days I don't do as well. So it's a little bit of a resetting. I do try to make my calendar work for me. I block time for when I know there's priorities coming up. I think that's important. I also think it's important to be a good example for your organization. I think you should take vacation. And I think if you give yourself the ability to take vacations, other people will too, which I think is healthy. I think leaving early so you can make your child's event or activity is important, and it gives people that permission. So I would say realize that you're setting the example for others. I think having a great boss makes things much easier. Having that conversation about that your family is important and how can you make this work, having that conversation early on, I think is very helpful on that. That being said, I actually think there's a skill to also making work and personal life work together. So I'll give an example. My son plays baseball. I can get a lot of work done actually in the car while he's at baseball practice, reading, responding to emails, looking through reports. So don't underestimate your ability to kind of manage two things at once. And then finally, I would say involve your kids in local government. I think my son is proud of what I do, and I think he kind of has a sense of pride in it. And I think it makes, when you maybe get home a little late or when you're not able to do something, if they understand the bigger picture, I think that makes a healthier relationship.
Those are some great points, especially getting them involved in local government early. I like that a lot. All right, Peggy.
I would just say that, the balance, I don't think there's ever a balance that you can achieve. So I say calibration, right? It is a daily calibration. And I always try to find ways of piggybacking and being able to, if I'm out and about and I need to be there for family, and especially, my son is already, he's in his 40s. I've got a grandson that's graduating, right? So my time is spent with caretaking of parents, right? And so, we all have those challenges, but we're in the community. If it means I can stop by and reach out to a business owner on the way, or so I feel like it's more of a calibration, and it's a daily one. I do look for those times to be kind of off the clock, because I get my best ideas when I'm exercising or backpacking or doing the things that I love to do, because we know that all work and no play makes all of us very dull. So, and it really does help us be creative. So I really try to find those times, even during the day, to take that, even if it's a half an hour walk. I do a lot of meetings where I walk around our city, and it's so much gets me out of the office. It gets staff out of the office. It gets council members in an area that, it's their district, so they want to show you something anyway. So it again, just trying to work a little more intentional and trying to piggyback on those opportunities. So I'm saving time on the end to take that time out for myself.
That's great. We have some great questions in the chat already. One of them, though, I feel like is similar to what we're talking about now, and asking about finding those boundaries, and if there are any tips on making those boundaries as a city manager, assistant city manager, and deputy city manager. What are some other tips that you could give people?
I'm just going to jump in. I've managed, I always try to manage expectations, right? Because those emails come in, right? They come in on Sunday nights, they come on Saturday mornings, they come in at late in the evening, they come in early in the morning. And I set expectations for staff that, I don't want them to be responding, immediately and on their time off. But I have to model it too, which is sometimes harder. So I always use the function on Outlook that says send later. So it looks like it's coming in on Monday morning at 8. I might have worked on it over the weekend to save time on a Monday morning. But I do try to, and I manage expectations with my council members. I have 7 of them. And so I try to make sure that folks understand that we've got to make sure that we are not burning out our staff. And that goes all the way up to the top, the city manager. And so, and they really respect it, but it's setting those clear boundaries. Like, you know, yes, it is a 24/7 job, but I'm not answering questions 24/7, so.
So I'll jump in as well. Peggy, that is such such a good answer about managing expectations. You know, because I think if you start off and you're always accessible 24 hours a day, they'll never stop. You know, so if you don't set those clear boundaries, and it's so important, like as Peggy said, to push it down into the organization. One, you have to model it as a leader, but two, to push it down into the organization. When I worked with Loudoun County, um, my county administrator was really good about managing and establishing boundaries. So he basically had like a process. You know, he said if I email you, that's the lowest priority. If I text you, it's probably important, but you don't have to respond right away. If I call you after hours, it's important. You know, so he was really good about managing that. So we knew that if he's calling and it's after hours, oh, we're picking up. But rarely, if ever, you know, if he emailed us, we didn't have to respond, you know, till late. And so I try to model that for my team as well, because we do get emails all day long, all night long. And, you know, and if it's important, I mean, because I make a habit of trying to at least look at my phone every so often, but not all day, every day. If I'm out with family and friends, I'm out with family and friends. So, but Peggy, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Thank you for that.
Well, I was gonna say, I agree with Valmarie. I think you have to yourself think about what the sensitivity or time urgency of something is. A lot of things aren't that urgent, and honestly, your response is gonna be better if you wait and get more information and kind of collect your thoughts. So really thinking about how urgent it is, a lot of things can wait.
Those are really, really great suggestions and tips. Thank you. We'll go on to the next question. What are some of the skills and competencies that are essential to succeed in this field? Valmarie.
Ooh, good question. So I believe that there are many essential skills and competency, right? But as I reflect on the past 3 decades, and Lord, when I say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been 30 years. And it really has. So I have 5 that resonate with me and I try to emulate it on a daily basis. 1 is adaptability and flexibility. 2 is teamwork and collaboration. 3 is critical thinking and problem solving. 4 is ethics. 5 is effective communication, and that is both in writing and verbal communication. So, you know, again, local government can be extremely fast paced with many competing priorities. So you have to be both adaptable and flexible, as you never know what the day might hold. I mean, you never know. You can have a list of things that you plan on doing and won't get to any of them. You know, also local government again has many different business lines, right? So public works, parks and recreation, economic development, housing, social services, the whole 9. And so we have to all work together in order to meet the needs of our communities. So that's teamwork and collaboration. And if you ask any planner whatsoever about critical thinking and problem solving, analyzing land use application is critical thinking at its best. And then ethics. We're entrusted to create communities where residents can live, work, learn, and thrive. We have to be ethical in everything that we do. And certainly, last but not least, when we have the ability to communicate with different people from all walks of life, whether it's staff, whether it's a resident, whether it is an elected official, someone that's on a board and commission, we have to meet them where they are. So we have to be able to communicate based upon how they receive information. So communication is absolutely key and vital in order to work in this area. So those are just 5, and I'm sure you know my co-panelists have some others, but those are certainly 5 that I try to model every day.
Those are great ones. Shanna.
Well, I was gonna say that is so well said. I would just say my first one is just the value of public service. That really, it is a noble profession. It's a wonderful profession, and that there's so much good that comes from public service, and that really guides kind of how I start my day each day on it. But I would say kind of once you get through the goal of public service, it's really about relationships and really thinking about your relationships internally, externally, and what you're doing to nurture those. And so I would really put a lot of time and value in those relationships because they really, especially when you go through challenging circumstances, it's relationships that help you get through things. So that's a big thing for me. Similar to communication, but I've figured out that listening is really important. And it's a lot more important to listen than talk. And that's something that I had to learn, and I'm still learning. But really listening to hear what people are saying, because sometimes they have things that they're not necessarily saying, but if you really listen to where they are, you can gather that. My last two is just being decisive. I think as a city manager and as assistant city manager, you've got to make some decisions, and it can't be something that you ponder for hours. I think you really have to learn to really look at the situation, trust your instincts, trust your staff, and make that decision so people can keep moving on. And finally, I would say resilience. You know, there's going to be times that you're criticized, and having that tough skin to keep going is an important thing. And honestly, I don't think you can learn it without going through the tough times. So that's a value in itself. But having that resilience, I think, is a great skill or competency that I've learned throughout my career.
Great. Peggy.
Well, I mean, seems like Valmarie and Shanna and I were all like on the same page, because even under comms, I had listening skills. But I'm going to just add to the list, because the five that you mentioned, Valmarie, are actually in our values for organizations. So gold stars, you hit the nail on the head, because I want staff to have that North Star as we are, because we do deal with complex topics and situations in local government. I would add creativity and empathy, because we make it a point when we're developing policy and organization. I always say, what are the unintended consequences, and who can this potentially hurt or negatively impact? Because often we say, oh, we got this great idea, let's go do it. And I always say, well, what are we trying to solve, and who is it going to impact? And it makes everybody kind of take a step back and go, oh, and if you're not familiar with the community that it's going to impact, or you don't, and you need to educate yourself on it, it's one of those times where it's time well spent, because you're not doing the mop and bucket crew at the end and trying to fix it, or pull things back after you've implemented it. So I really, really do believe that that empathy, because this is a people business. Set aside AI, and then amazing things are happening on AI. This is a people business. We serve people. People are providing those services. I always have to tell people, we're not the city. We are people providing those services to our community. And the more that we hone those skills of empathy and meeting people where they are, the easier it is to provide the services that our community wants, and be tuned into that. And then just the, part of that critical thinking is being creative, because, logic may say we should take this route, but maybe there's a more creative way to do it, and an easier way for things to get implemented. So, always trying to figure out a way, can we be more efficient, effective? Is there an easier way to implementation? What are other, I always ask, well, what are other cities doing? We can't be the first one dealing with this. What are, and people, it's like, oh yeah, I got to do that research. But it's like, ICMA is a wealth of information, and the networks that we have through ICMA and through even our state organizations have been an incredible help. But it's about being creative, because we got to deliver a ton of services, and we got to do it quickly and well. So creativity to me is also ranks up in there.
Those are all really great. So we'll go to the last question, then we'll open it up for Q&A. What advice would you give your 25-year-old self? Valmarie.
All right, so my philosophical self. So I would definitely tell myself that I am, my 25-year self, that I'm more than enough. To speak up often and confidently, to make decisions based upon long-term goals and not just for the moment. That I bring a unique skill set that is needed, valued, and wanted. Don't sweat the small stuff. That you can absolutely have a family and a successful career. And remember that people are the most important things. People are the most important, not things. Prioritize family, friends, and relationships. And last but not least, which is, I abide by and live by the golden rule: do unto others as you have them do unto you. Treat people the way they should be treated. So
I wish I would have gotten that advice as a 25-year-old too. So that's great. Shanna.
Yeah, well, it's so well said. But what I would tell my 25-year-old self is I would say yes to opportunities. Don't be scared. If someone asks you, they see something in you that you may not see yourself. So trust that they know that, say yes to opportunities. Always work on your relationships with your coworkers, with your colleagues, with your community members. There are people that I met in my first 2 years in this profession who I am still friends with to this day, and who have been a tremendous resource. And so it's just the value of relationships is tremendous in local government. Third, I would say is, and this may be different than what a lot of people would say, but don't worry about your salary. Don't worry about your title. Don't worry about the size of your organization. It's really about, do you have the ability to learn and grow in that situation? It works out for itself. And so if you can find the place that you can grow, they'll realize your talent, and that will lead to greater success. I would say be focused yet flexible on your career goals. You keep working at it and you keep finding things, but you also have to know it's not necessarily going to be on your timeline, and that's okay. And then finally, I would say have fun. It really is a wonderful profession with wonderful people. And if you're not having fun at least once during your day, then really, you've got to change something to make it really a meaningful, fun place to be.
That's great, especially the advice about the title and the salary, because I do feel like we get caught up in that a lot. Peggy.
And Shanna, I would say that I would still say that to everybody, no matter what time in their career, because it's not always about the upward progression, right? We get to a point where we're like, I'm happy where I'm at. I'm fine if I do a lateral move, right? Or it is about that personal satisfaction, right? I would just say, and Valmarie, I've been in this for 30 years as well. And I would say back when we started, I wish I would have told my 25-year-old self to be bold, just kind of, teeing off of what you said, and not taking the slights personally, but don't excuse them either. There was a lot, just being a young woman in government. I did a lot of listening, but I never felt that I could contribute. And I never imagined that I was going to be a city manager. And I just feel like, be bold. This is your opportunity. And quality of life is depending on you, right? So might as well be bold and bring your best self to the table and feel confident that you are enough, and that what you're bringing to the table is something that's needed, and feel good about that and feel strong about that. So I like that bold leadership at whatever level you're at.
Definitely. One of the questions in here, I feel like kind of falls in line with, the advice that you would give your 25-year-old self. How do you overcome that imposter syndrome and work your way up to that next level when you have the education, and how do you, build yourself up to that next position?
Do it afraid. Do it afraid. Do it anyway. Take that next step. I know it's difficult. There has never been a position that I've taken that I wasn't afraid. that I didn't question myself, but I did it anyway. And what I have found is that there's victory on the other side of fear.
Oh, Valmarie, that's so well said. And Shanna, you mentioned relationships. I just build your network of your support system. CMs are probably the worst at it. You know, we kind of get, I always laugh and go, if I can't be myself with our CM group, then who knows our job better than the folks that are in it, right? And we need to have that support system because we are faced with those difficult decisions and you're always questioning yourself. And, you know, did I make the right decision? Was I qualified to make that decision? What do I know about that? But we also surround ourselves with amazing, amazing professionals in our workforce. So, you know, relying on that team dynamic, and making your organizations a little more horizontal. So you're not feeling like you're the only one making the decision. Like if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I want my staff to be able to say, we've got our North Star. Like, you know, I don't want that to be all reliant just on me. So yeah.
And I would just say, you know, mentors are important. Having those people you can have conversations with and that can be a resource for you is important throughout your career.
Definitely. And I would say the ICMA, and we do have our Coach Connect where you can connect with mentors and find many and do that. So highly recommend checking that out. One of the questions we have from Melissa, have you found yourself and or your family personally attacked or targeted in the public space or on social media as a result of your position or the work you're doing at your organization, and any tips on navigating this?
Don't read the comments.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, do not read the comments. I have. A lot of it is particularly when I started doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work in establishing the office. It wasn't well received by some. I mean, it was fully embraced by the local government that I work for. It was fully embraced, by leadership, but yeah. So the community, some members of the community had issue with it. But again, I'm real big on doing introspection. I'm real big on, if you get to know me, you know that I love people. And I believe what we were doing was right. I believe what we were doing was needed. And so I pressed forward. And the only advice that I will say is, as long as you are, internally, you feel that you are doing the right thing, and you do have the support of the local government body that you're working with, keep moving.
Well said. Well said. Stay true to yourself. Because there's always going to be haters, and you just have to, as long as you're staying true to your value system, that keeps you on track. And you're right, don't read the comments. Although I do, I tend to look at them every so often. Just you want to know what the worst is, and then you can only go up from there. But again, I go back to that, staying true to the values. If you know you're following that path, don't let it get in your head, and don't take it personal. Sometimes people just they're frustrated with the decision. They don't even think about the person behind the services. And that's why I always try to humanize our staff. Because I think it's important. I think it's important for the community to understand that we're not a machine.
In mine's something similar. I had an experience probably 5 or 7 years ago. It had to do with the zoning decision that affected my neighborhood. And I had a couple of parents kind of call me out of the school event about it. And it stung. But I also realized they don't know a lot about how local government works, how zoning works, and some things like that. So I think once I put that in perspective, I dealt with it better. So
yeah, demystifying what we do, which should be a daily task for all of us, showing people how sausage is made, and that there are reasons. Process sometimes can be seemingly bureaucratic, but it also protects the community. And so how do we show that? And I find that a lot of people, it kind of takes that anger into like awe, like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So those community academies, planning academies, all those things are really important. Maybe strapping a webcam on our head during the day so people know what our days are like.
Yeah, if they only knew, really only knew what we did on a daily basis, I think they would be absolutely, shocked. We had a real big project that it was going back and forth for a long time, and we still have people that are very, very upset that it went a certain way. But as you said, Peggy and Boshana, they really don't understand, from it, they don't have a holistic view, even though, everything that we do is in the public. Everything that we do, we require public, participation. You can come and have your say, not just at the meetings, but we do community meetings. So anytime we're doing really big projects, we go above and beyond. But if they just don't understand, it makes it very difficult. But yeah, if you know what you're doing, just keep moving forward.
Great. So we've gotten a few questions about maneuvering in local government as a woman, and if you've experienced any resistance from male counterparts once you've reached a leadership role. So I guess speaking to both of those, just maneuvering as a woman in local government, or that if you've received any resistance and how you handled that once you've been in a leadership role.
I always tell this story, and I think it's important because it went back to your question earlier about the imposter syndrome, Erika. I would think it was my first month as the CM, and I went to my CM group and I was so excited. And I was kind of in awe because most of them were veterans in their profession. So I sat very quietly through our meeting, and at the end, one of them said, "Hey, Peggy, Petaluma is not a starter city." And I was like, oh, and I kind of laughed it off. I said, well, now you tell me, right? 3 years into my job and passing a 1-cent sales tax during pandemic, so saving us from bankruptcy, and doing some amazing things in the first few years of being, at the city. I talked to this individual because he was retiring, and I said, what you said to me was kind of motivation every day, because I could have taken it, I could have made it like, oh, wow, yeah, what am I doing here? And he said, oh, I didn't mean it that way. I didn't mean it. You've done great work. I didn't mean it that way. And I said, no, you did. But I feel that whenever you come in, and I think this is for our next generation, this is for our up next leaders, right? It's for this next generation that are going to take our seats in these positions. It's going to be really important for you to feel like you're embraced and you are supported. And I think it's incumbent upon us, when we are hearing that, to make sure that nobody's feeling that way in our organization as they're trying to look at, well, what do I want to do next? And what is my upward trajectory? And I really do believe in reverse mentoring. I get so much out of it, but it helps me make space for those that don't know, like, do I have to have a secret password to get up there and be in that? And I think that as women, and especially when I started, 30 years ago, that was not a thing. There wasn't too many female city managers or women in leadership that I could say, oh yeah, I'm gonna be that. So I just kind of take it upon myself to make sure that our staff feel that there is a very easy way to, transcend if they want that.
And that's really good, Peggy. And I'll say this, I have had some challenges, both being a woman and a woman of color. But and I think, Shanna, you may have mentioned this. It is so important to have mentors, and to have a tribe, I call. People that you can talk to, you can reach out to, and just have those conversations. But I will also say this, every leadership position that I have over the last 30 years, with the exception of one, have been given to me by mail. So there are so many men that do support us and they do create spaces for us. I am extremely humbled that they saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself, particularly when I was first promoted as a director. I had a female city administrator, but it was the interim director who was a male that went to her and said, "What are you thinking? Why isn't she, in the top seat?" It was him that went to fight for me, basically, like, you have no idea who you have over here. But all throughout my career, it's been men that have opened doors for me, men. So for that, I'm grateful.
And I will say, kind of similar to Valmarie, I've worked with almost primarily male bosses, and they've all been wonderful and an integral part of my career. So I think in most cases, it's really male counterparts have helped me in my career. I will say one thing, and I probably am self-imposed this, but kind of talking about, there are times I was scared. I think I felt the need to be very confident and not to show them that I was scared. So sometimes I even think I over prepared for things because I put a lot of pressure on myself to do that. But I think in general, I think there's been people who have supported me throughout my career, men and women, and those are all I'm thankful for.
Agreed.
That's great. So it looks like we got a few questions about transitioning into local government from either the private sector or the academic sector. What is some advice that you would give those people wanting to go into local government, whether that be early career or someone transitioning from a different sector? Any skills to highlight? How do you transition those skills on your resume to reflect for local government positions? That makes sense.
So for me in particular, during the pandemic when it was really, really difficult to hire, we began looking for transferable skills. And you can find that in the private sector as well as from academics, and it has worked well. The only thing that I wanted to make sure that we brought someone in, particularly if they were in a leadership role in local government, they've never worked for local government before, was to ensure that they had that foundation. Now, we found a really good class at ICMA, which is local government 101 and 201, I believe those are. And we would put them through that because it is a little different, but the skills, they usually work very, very well.
And I would just say as employers, especially during this time when we have baby boomers and a ton of retirements. So we come out of the pandemic, people are rethinking what they want to do with their lives as local government employers, and rethinking how we recruit for these positions. We are recruiting for HR director. And we're seeing a lot of people from the private sector, and you see hesitancy on stuff like, oh, but they don't understand labor laws, or they don't understand. It's like, there's some transferable skills. And as long as, and back to your point, Valmarie, is providing that, I think there's a lot of responsibility for the employer to make sure, because we want to keep the staffing levels up. We've got work to do. And so we need to be creative, but also some tips, the transferable skills are, customer service, your critical thinking, what projects have you worked on? How do you work on a team? How do you work cross-departmentally? Those are things that I think any employer would grab, and especially local government. We need that. All those values we talked about earlier, I would put that on my resume.
I mean, I would agree with Peggy. I mean, I think talent is something we're all looking for. I would say just make sure your resume, you're not into a lot of maybe the technical jargon that may not be understandable. Just using kind of common words to find those common skill sets is helpful.
That's great. Another question, do you feel that you have to interact with the community and residents differently as a woman in leadership? And how do you handle that, if so?
That is thought provoking. That's going to stick
was-
with me all day. I don't, I do when I have to work with people that have, our city is kind of interesting. And I always tell people, I always try to disarm them a little bit, because we have a lot of folks that say, I've been here 4 generations, or I've been here 5 generations. And I'm like, but does that mean that your opinion matters any more than somebody who's been here a month, right? So I sometimes have to break through some of that, because somebody will say, I get a developer come in and say, well, you don't know, you know, but I don't know that it's mostly a woman. It's mostly because I haven't been here for 5 decades or 5 generations. So I, you know, as a woman, no, but maybe some, I'm going to just say for some of the, just, you know, some of the establishment, just coming at something a little differently is always a little disarming. So I try to find ways that we can connect as humans, and then let's get to the hard stuff. Let's talk about the stuff that needs to get discussed. So
I would concur. I don't know if it really is a gender thing. I think you just try to find commonalities when you develop a relationship with someone. I mean, and it could be about interests, or it could be you've got kids similar age, or I mean, it could be lots of different things. I think you just try to find where you have a common connection and you build upon that.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm always just myself. I can't be anyone else. So, you know, when I interact with people, I interact with them based upon, you know, how I am. Now, don't get it messed up. Now, if I need to be a little forceful, we'll absolutely have to do that. But I have found that they're usually very welcoming to women. You know, you can have those difficult conversations, but you usually have them a different way. You know, I'm never going to be yelling and screaming, because that's just not who I am. But I have always been, I feel that I've been accepted as a woman. So just myself.
I guess this kind of falls similarly into that question. What would be your advice on being included but not being labeled as difficult when you speak out or up if you are a leader in a leadership position as a woman?
So just off the top of my head, I think make sure that you're presenting yourself well, that you're factual, that you're concise, and that you're not emotional. I mean, I think it's really, I think if you do a good job sharing your information or your argument, I think then that is the way to go. And that honestly, however people label you is probably more their issue than yours. So just be confident in how you present yourself.
well said.
I love that. I was about to piggyback on you, saying that basically what someone else thinks about you is not your concern.
That's right. That's right.
So as long as you are confident in what you're saying and how you're presenting the information, that's how you do it. I think that, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are absolutely spaces where, you know, women can be treated differently. I mean, we know that, having worked in this profession for 3 decades, we know that. But it gets to a point where we have to make sure that as long as we're doing our part, like you said, Shanna, you know your information, presenting it well. How they feel about it is on them and not on you.
And it really goes to results, right? So
Exactly.
somebody may, you know, I've had people, I just had somebody recently come into our office and say, well, it used to be I could just get things done. You know, I just could come in here and get things done at City Hall. And I said, what are those things? Tell me what you can't get done. And it was just, they were used to a certain way of doing business. And, we just we're much more transparent than we were 30 years ago. And, when you start to look at the results, it's like, what's not getting done? Yeah, you might not have that insider view that you had before, but, it's really about what are we delivering for the community, and the community knows. And I use them as a generic, but, you'll always have your critics. And it's always good to be introspective. Like, oh, maybe I was a little harsh on that, or maybe I could have found a better way to deliver it, because you're not always prepared, right? We sometimes go and get into situations where we're not always prepared as much as we'd like to be. So I always use that as a growth opportunity, but we're human. Every day's a new day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Another question from a early career person who is looking to get the first job. There seems to be a lot of entry high-level positions, and a lot of organizations are quick to recruit and promote young people in the field. They're worried about not being able to have those skills to succeed. Do you have any suggestions on how to gain skills outside of the workplace, or how to build up your resume with professional development? Yes.
So I'll say that, the web has made it very easy to do online courses. I think you need to take the initiative to look, join different organizations. ICMA is an absolutely phenomenal organization to join, not just because I'm on the board. It is absolutely phenomenal organization. But like today is a webinar that's free. I mean, there are a lot of different webinars that are free that you can join. Also, reading. There's so many books. I think I saw a couple books even listed in the chat. Crucial Conversations, Radical Candor, Leadership 101. There's so many things that you can have at your fingertips. You just have to be intentional about what it is that you want to do, and what it is that you want to learn, and go do it. There's no one stopping you. And, as an employer, I absolutely believe in professional development. I believe in making sure that employees have the tools that they need to be successful and to thrive. And that means looking at opportunities for advancement.
And as a management intern, I would definitely be going to my supervisor and saying, hey, is there other projects that I can help? Look for other ways so you don't get pigeonholed into something where you're looking to grow other skills. And also, if you want to get in local government, just volunteering, even in your own community, may not be the city that you're applying for jobs for, but go to the nonprofit world, because I guarantee you most of them are working with the city anyways. And it's kind of nice to know what our advocates are doing on the other side, and be able to bring that to your prospective employer and be able to say, hey, this is a way that we can bridge some gaps with our community. So I think that's another good way.
My one piece of advice is think about it both from breadth and depth. Breadth, you want to know all parts of the organization. Really, it's going to be to your advantage to know how different departments and services work, but also depth. If there's an area that you're interested in, that you want to learn more about, that's going to pay off in the long run.
Great advice. I know that we are about at time, so sorry for the questions we did not get to, but I will let you all say a few, just last words, and we'll close it out. Thank you again for joining us today. Hopefully we can do more of these in the future. Thank you to everybody who joined us in the chat with the questions, and everybody who came to view this webinar. But Valmarie, if you have any last words of wisdom, advice?
Well, I just want to first say thank you, especially to Peggy and Shanna. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and being on the panel with you. And lastly, and I think I share this advice, what I give my 25-year-old self, just remember that you are more than enough. You have the tools and the skills that needed to make it in this profession. And that you are absolutely needed and valued, and we want you. So thank you.
Great.
I would just say this has just been an inspiring and thoughtful hour. I mean, there's so many takeaways I'm going to take from this. But I mean, just to everyone that's here, it's just incredible to have so much talent in local government. And I'm just so excited about the future and seeing what comes next.
And I thank you so much for the opportunity to, be in the presence of so many amazing people, local government professionals. I just would say, stick with it. We need your talent. We need you to be in positions of leadership, and we all serve each other. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. And I bet Valmarie and Shanna are the same way. Don't be intimidated reaching out and saying, hey, can I do an informational interview? Or can I, we're here to support one another. So take advantage of that. And thank
Awesome.
you, Erika and Laura, and
Yeah.
Valmarie and Shanna. So nice.
Thank you, everybody. We'll be sending out the link to the recording to everybody who registered. So thank you again, everybody, for joining. And thank you again to our panelists. Everybody have a wonderful day.
Care.
Great. Do the same. Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you all.